Well, welcome everyone to the Evolving Man podcast. My name is Alan DeMonto. I'm the founder of the Evolving Man and the Awaken Man Project. Have you ever had the experience of wanting to tell your friends something that was going on in your life, and then at the last minute you pulled back? What about starting a conversation with another man you don't know? Well, today my guest has spent 25 years working with men who have discovered that what most men share in the same group of issues, and that's what we're going to unpack today. But before we get into that, I want to remind you of our brotherhood, the Band of Brothers. This is our group mentoring program where strong and resilient men get together on a regular basis, not only to dedicate for their own personal growth, but the dedication of the growth of their brothers. And guys, while that's a phenomenal program and we get some great results from there, if you're really interested in raising the standards of yourself as a father, a husband, an entrepreneur, then I encourage you to participate in our Hero's Quest. It's a 90-day challenge. It's guaranteed to improve at least one aspect of your life. And where can you find all of this stuff? Well, you can find it at the Awaken Man Training Academy at members, that's plural, members.theawakenman.net. Now with that, let's get on with today's episode.
Today's man knows who he is, where he stands, and what he aspires to become. Solid in his convictions, owner of his destiny, ever evolving into husbands and fathers our wives and children expect and deserve. We are the masters of our life and the leaders of our homes and community. Welcome to the movement. Stay strong, my brother.
Well, as you know, gentlemen, I'd like to get started off by asking a few questions for our talk, just so we can set the stage for what it is we're going to discuss. So here's the first question for you. Is your relationship with your father not as good as it could be? And do you often get criticized for not sharing your thoughts and emotions? The last thing I'd like you to consider is, do you get complaints from significant people in your life for not being loving or romantic? Now, if you said no to any of these questions, then stick around, as my guest today is Richard Avdoian, and he's going to pull back the curtain on these and other troubling issues facing men today. And as Richard likes to say, he's going to share with us the naked truth behind it all. Now, Richard is a founder and CEO of the Midwest Business Institute Incorporated. It's a business coaching, consulting, and training firm that's been in operation since 1996. Richard's also the founder of the Men's Mentoring Men Network, and he's a nationally recognized speaker on leadership, team dynamics, and employee development. Well, Richard, welcome to the show. How are things today?
I'm wonderful, Alan. How about you?
I'm doing great, my friend. It's so great to have you on the podcast. I've been vibrating, just waiting to be able to get to do this with you today. So I'm really grateful that you're here.
Well, I'm excited as well. Actually, I was counting the days before this podcast.
Right on. Good to hear. Well, let's start off. First question I have for you is, now that I know you got a lot of things done in your career, but can you share with us your journey and how you got into finally doing men's work?
Okay, very good. I initially started off as a psychotherapist. I have a master's in counseling and a master's in social work. And when I found out real early in my career that the majority, if not the high majority of therapists, social workers were women. And I was outnumbered. And what I found later on as I was working is that men were getting very frustrated, because one of the things, as a man myself, the one thing that therapists tend to always ask is, how do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? Well, that's the least likely question that men want to answer, because we know anger and get out of here. And we're not really programmed to really talk about, we're either pissed off, depressed, or angry. And we don't get the permission that women have to say, I'm downhearted, I'm feeling sad, because those are seen as wimpy, kind of girly feelings. So that we really get very frustrated when people keep probing, tell me how you feel, tell me how you feel. And we do that in our relationships. Women do that often with their significant others. And it really pushes us back against the wall, and men really don't know how to handle it. So as I kept working with men, I started realizing that the approach had to be different. It had to be different. And I started to really start calculating my therapy sessions on how was I wording things to get men to really get down to their nakedness and really trust me to talk about the issues that were really keeping them blocked. So I evolved over time and started specializing more and more with men. And I started a program years ago called Voyager to Weekend to help men examine those issues.
Nice, nice, nice. I know totally what you mean, Richard. When I was going through some challenges in my life a few years back, it was really hard to find a place where, as a guy, I could feel safe to want to express what was going on. And not that I necessarily wanted to dive deep into my feelings yet, because I didn't know how to do that. But being in a room, and like you said, most counselors today are women, and it's just uncomfortable for a guy to be able to talk about his stuff, in front of another woman, especially even in a group of guys. So it really takes skill to be able to do that. And that's some of the things that in our conversations before that I know that you've developed, and I kind of teased a little bit earlier, but in your psychotherapy practice, you said you were able to distill your insights into what the issues that men bring to the table. There's really 4 of them. And I was wondering if you would mind going through what each of those 4 are.
Certainly. The first one, as you pointed out in one of your statements earlier on in this podcast, unresolved issues with their fathers. Men spend their entire life wanting to be recognized by their fathers, to be stated as that you are a man amongst men. And fathers don't often give us that. And we spend our lives trying to get that answer from our fathers, that affirmation that you are a young man, a man amongst men. And what happens is we actually, it starts so early in life that we learn that these guys don't get it. Picture yourself as a kindergarten kid, and you come home with this piece of artwork that no one knows what the heck it is. And you take it home and you show your mom, and she puts it in a place of honor, and she gloats over it and just honors it and praises you. And you get all excited. So now the man who you want to hear the approval from, daddy, comes home. He looks at it and says, well, Ricky, next time, if you do it like this, it won't have that crease in it. And they could have used a different color. So I learned nothing pleases this guy. Or you go to a sporting event, and the guy is sitting there, and he's watching his son, and the kid strikes out, and the kid looks to his father, and the guy's going, man. So the kid says, again. And I'll give you a great example. I never played soccer. Most of the men that I know don't play soccer. But all our boys were playing soccer. So what are men doing? We're on the sidelines and we're yelling at the boys, run here, run there, run there. Well, all of a sudden, my son Gregory and 2 of his buddies come up to us 3 fathers and very boldly put the ball out and says, why don't you show us how to do it?
Wow.
Which shut us all down because we don't know. But yet we criticize truly because we want them to do better than us. But we got to do it in a better way. We got to do it in a better way. And most guys spend their entire life. And then what they troublesome is, we think other boys are hearing something different. We think other boys aren't hearing this from their fathers. So we think we're not okay because dad is saying I'm not okay. But other boys' fathers must be telling them they are okay. So now we feel inadequate amongst other boys. Now, that's not universal. And I want to be clear about that. Nor do I want to say that all female therapists aren't effective with men. That's not true either. I'm just saying they were outnumbered. But what happens here is that more often than not, we are hoping and praying to get affirmation from our fathers. And we go through hurdles to try to get that. And if our fathers are deceased, we look at whoever's the next male figure in our life. It could be a mentor. It could be your boss. It's wanting to be told you're okay and you are a man amongst men. That's the first one. Second one is our inability, and this is a tough one for guys. It's our inability to separate love, passion, compassion, and sex. Again, we're not taught how to be romantic, and yet women want romance. Well, if our fathers never taught us and we never witnessed our fathers doing it to our mothers, how can we give something that we didn't learn? And quite frankly, our fathers didn't learn from their fathers and from their fathers to their fathers how to be romantic. And sexually, what happens is let me go back to the passion. Hugging. Today's National Hugging Day, I understand. And I sent it out to all my buddies and I said, I want you guys to hug your best friend, but don't burp them. You know, I mean, we all go on bum, 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 but
Yeah.
God forbid our crotches touch. Holy God, that would freak us out. And yet, hugging is a very powerful acceptance and loving and comforting resource. Women could do all kinds of hugs. They have a hug for everybody. They have a mother-daughter hug. They have a sister-sister hug. They have a best girlfriend hug. They have a husband hug. They have all kinds of hugs. Men have one hug. Either burp our male friends, if we even do that, or we grab our wives when we want to have sex.
Yeah,
You know, there's
so
no,
true.
you know, and then what happens is women learn very early, sexually, and men won't admit this, is that most men will routinely use the same sexual platform that they did the first time they had a successful experience with a woman. They do the same thing the rest of their life. And women will say, I've had women say to me in my seminars, Richard, I know. He takes his big toe and he'll rub against my ankle. Then he'll rub my one breast, 1, 2, 3. He gets that toe, and he's done. He falls asleep. You know, it's like the same pattern. You know, and it's sad because no one teaches us about sexuality. Romance is another one. If you are a man of few words, but you love your wife dearly, but you don't say it, but then it's Valentine's Day, and you go to buy a Valentine card. God forbid you buy one that's too romantic, because then she chews you out because you're not that like that anytime during the year. So why now? Or you write a humorous one, and she says, "See there, you're never romantic, so you can't win." So I learned how to handle that. When I go to the Hallmark store or wherever place to buy a card, I usually go in and out numerous places until I find a guy older than me by at least 10 years. And while he's there looking for the cards, I'm a guy that likes to talk. So I'll say, hey, you know, you looking for one too? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, how many years you been married? And if they've been married more than I have been married, I buy whatever card they buy.
Oh, that's a good.
I figure they're doing something right, you know. So I figured I'll buy that card, and it works. You know, it is humorous, but it's true. We can't, if we try, then they either suspect something's wrong, or they question why we're doing it now. So we can't win. So it's really very hard for men to even be passionate to a buddy. You know, we have a lot of guys going through divorce that need the support of a good friend. And yet we have a difficulty even asking that. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute when we talk about friendships, that it's really problematic for us to really, just like on sex, I'll go back to sex again. And this is going to sound really ridiculous, but it's true. There was a study done not long ago that the average male does not know how to properly put on a condom. That shocked me.
Wow.
That absolutely shocked me, that the average male, when they've interviewed, didn't know how to put it on properly. Now, you would think it would be a simple thing, but it's not. I mean, it's really ridiculous that they studied men. That why shouldn't we be teaching our sons that?
It's true.
You know, I mean, even with sexuality, I did some work with a young man when I was in therapist, and the family brought this boy to me, and the kid was really messed up. And it turns out he thought he was dying, this young boy. And this is a true story. He was having wet dreams, but he never told his parents because he thought he was ill and something was coming out of him, a fluid that he was sick, because no one ever talked to him about wet dreams.
Right.
I mean, it's said, I've lectured to women's programs, and I'll ask women about the change, you know, and women know when their sons have a dream because they do the laundry. Majority of the men of women do their laundry, and you could tell when a kid had a wet dream. You could tell as an adult, a guy, when you have a wet dream because your underwear's stiff.
Yeah.
But the truth is, fathers don't talk to our sons about that's your rite of passage from boyhood to manhood, and this is what could happen. You know, we should be educating our sons. Why are we? Because we're not comfortable talking about it. We're not comfortable talking about it.
That's so true.
You know, touch is another one, Alan. You know, I speak to physicians. Do you know that men could get breast cancer? Did you know that?
No. Wow.
Yes, they can. And men do get breast cancer. And have you ever been examined by your physician where he fondled your testicles and taught you how to find out if you had cancer?
Well, of course. Yeah.
You have? I've never.
Yeah.
I've never had a physician teach me how to self-examine myself or ever check me out for breast cancer. And yet I've lectured to family physicians. I've interviewed more men. You're one of the first men that I've ever interviewed that said the doctor actually taught him how to examine himself for testosterone, cancer. That's sad.
It is.
They don't want to touch.
That's totally unbelievable, Richard, because I guess I just took it for granted because prostate cancer is prevalent in my family tree. So it's something that once I hit 50, I was quite aware of. And so it was a conversation that I was willing to have with my
prostate
doctor.
cancer is different. That's different. That's up your rectum checking. Now I'm talking about finding your testicles.
True enough. Right.
That's, so, I mean, the whole thing about sexuality, passion are really difficult, and men are very private about it. Mm-hmm. Also, because we don't know when fathers do talk about their sex, the average place where fathers talk to their sons are in a car.
Yeah.
And they're driving and they'll look to their son and say, your mother said I should talk to you about sex now, but I assume you know everything. So what are you going to say, Ellen? If I was your father and I'm driving, you're in the car next to me, I said, Ellen, Mom said I should talk to your son about sex, but I assume you know everything. What are you going to say? No, Dad, I know nothing? Exactly. Or are you going to say, sure, Dad, I do?
Well, yeah, I'm going to lie.
Yeah, and he's relieved because he doesn't have to tell you he doesn't know anything. So now again, you assume other boys know because your father thinks you should know. So you don't know, and your friends don't know. So men don't know how to teach each other about sexuality.
That's so true. Wow.
I'm over talking and I apologize. I'm not letting you getting a word in there.
No, that's outstanding. I was just listening to that and you bring so much to light, the idea of, going back to the bedroom stuff. It's so true, right? We're pretty much robotic. We figure out a pattern of something, anything in life that works. We're really good at repeating that, but that doesn't work so great in the bedroom. And then we wonder why our wives are bored with us or tired of it because we have no sense of adventure or even exploring or even finding out from our wives if they even enjoy what it is that we're doing. Because the way you put it forward, I was thinking of my first marriage, and it's exactly the way it was. It was, I could tell you, right, that we started with this, and then it led to this, and then it led to that, and then we were done. And you knew the day of week and the time of day.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that too, foreplay was developed for women, not for men. And the reason why is women are so accustomed to being touched in life by their children, by their girlfriends, their friends. I mean, they all touch, hug, whatever. So touch is normal for them. We as men are touched so much less than women that any contact to our body can stimulate us. It doesn't mean we're sexually aroused. It means our body's reacting. And here's something that's frightening that men really don't want to admit. If two men were sitting down, and guys they're going to freak out when I say this in this podcast, but if two guys were sitting next to each other and I said, we're going to try an experiment. I want you, Alan, to put your left hand or your right hand on the thigh of the guy next to you and just leave it there. Don't massage, don't touch, just leave your hand there. I will tell you, there is a strong chance that guy will get an erection because of the physical stimulation of that touch. That doesn't mean that he's getting sexually aroused. His body's reacting to the touch. Just like when we jump into a warm pool, it shrivels up.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with touch. So we don't need a lot of touch. If we're in the situation, as soon as our penises get hard, we're ready to go. And it doesn't take that long. Where a woman, for her to get excited, there has to be a lot of foreplay to get her to beyond her norm. Our norm's here, their norm's way, way up above ours. So it is changing the dynamics. The other sad thing for men is as we get older, medical issues for our wives or for us can derail us from the pattern. And then what happens is if you haven't explored intimacy beyond your certain pattern, you become non-sexual because you're devastated that the process doesn't work anymore, and you become detached. And that's sad because intimacy is crucial to survival of life.
So true, Richard. And I think that's such a great point that you're bringing up about the physical touch for men, because we are raised, most of us, I'll suggest, are raised as men, are raised that we weren't held and touched, and that, especially once we got to the point where we're toddlers and we're running around and
3 years old.
yeah,
3 years old.
From that point on, the amount of physical touch that we would have, completely drops. And I think it's just it's just how we were raised. It's how my father was raised. My father's passed on now, and but he was never a guy. I don't ever remember my dad saying that he loved me or that he loved any of us, but we knew it, right? We knew it. And so as kids and as boys, as much as I would have liked to have had that, it's just something that wasn't there. And so when you get older, I know when I have my two boys, I made it an effort to make sure that every time I talk to them, I love you very much, son, love you very much, because it's something that I never heard. And why wouldn't we want to say that right. to our children, and boys or girls? Of course we
absolutely
want to do it,
absolutely. Right? Well, it's interesting because you're right. At 3 years old, 50% of the young men and women in their life change. They go from hugging the kid to shaking his hand, because little boys shake hands. And then little princesses can be tucked in bed when they're 15 years old and kiss them. Little boys at 3 start thrown in the bed. They're tousled in the bed. Little girls can sit in their dad's lap when they're teenagers, say, Daddy, I need this dress. And fathers eat it all up. Could you imagine a 14-year-old boy sitting on his dad's lap saying, hey, Dad, I need a new skateboard? It ain't going to happen.
No.
So, it's sad. Even in certain ethnic groups, I'm Armenian, and my father, I'm 100% Armenian, and my son and all Armenian men kiss each other on both cheeks, and we still do that. Now, other people think it's strange, but my son got so used to it, he doesn't care, and he does it to his sons.
That's so awesome.
I'm not saying praising us, but you got to model the changes, and I applaud you for changing what you're doing. Because that's the only way it's going to happen, is for us to make strides to be better than our fathers, but honoring the gifts they gave us, as limited they may have been, were the best they could give. Because no father gets up in the morning and says, I want to deprive my son of life. Exactly. Nobody does that.
No.
So we gotta honor that they give us life and learn from those things. Now, the third thing is friendships. This is another very sad component for men, because we strive and many times very jealous of our wives' girlfriends. Women typically, when you ask the average woman how many best friends she has, she'll say 1 to 3. It's either a sister, a cousin, an aunt, or some person they grew up with their whole life. Then they have girlfriends, which may be another 10 women that they socialize, go out to girls' night out with. And then they have girlfriends, the bigger network. Those 3 women know pretty much every intimate detail of that person's life. You ask the average guy, and he'll say he has 4 to 7 best friends. But none of them individually know anything of significance about the guy. They all know one little piece. And the truth of the matter is, we're taught early in life, don't trust other men because they're your competition and they'll use it against you. So you always never show your weakness, never show your vulnerability. And what happens in a divorce case, who gets all the friends, the man or the woman? After a divorce, usually the woman gets all the friends most of the time, deciding on the reason for the divorce. But more often than not, the girl gets them.
Yeah.
And yet the man who has those 5 or 7 friends are rarely invite him over because they don't trust this divorced man with their wife. So there's all kinds. So we're very lonely. 2 women could go anywhere together, Alan, and no one says a thing. If you and I'm 70. How old are you again?
55.
All right. If you and I went out to dinner and we were sitting at a table for 2 at a restaurant, what are the odds that people will look at us and somebody will say, they may not say it, but what do you think would they ever say, oh, look at those 2 guys? You would think they would say, oh, look at those two guys. You'd think, oh, look at those two guys. The implied thing is that we're gay.
Yeah.
No, two guys can't go to the movies together, but two women can go to the movies. So we can only do things in herds. It has to be 3 or more guys.
True.
That's safe.
Yeah, that's so true.
So it really, we are very lonely. Now, I'll give you a funny story. My wife has been part of a group of 15 Armenian women, all married for over 25 years. Every month they rotate someone's house. The husbands have to leave. I mean, the husband who's in the house is gone. Well, one year, for some reason, some of the guys came and we were in my house and we were in the basement. And the women are all upstairs, 15 women, and there's like 4 guys down here. And I said jokingly, because you remember my background in psychology, I said, you know, guys, there are 14 women upstairs that know what you look like buck naked. And they said, Avdoian, you're full of shit. And I said, I'm telling you, there are 14 women upstairs that know what you look like buck naked. They thought I was crazy. Months go by, and we were at some social event, and a lot of us guys were there with our wives. And 2 of the guys came up to me and said, Avdoian. I said, what? I went home and told my wife what you said, and my wife started laughing. She goes, oh, we talked about that the second year we were all getting together. So like for 25, I mean, it was hysterical that they were so, guys could not believe it. And I'm saying they're very public amongst themselves where men are very private. So there's a risk involved. I can't give you my weakness because you'll use it. But what we have to understand is in brotherhood, we're strengthening ourselves by asking for help from each other and offering guidance to each other so that we all become better husbands, fathers, friends, involved in a community and such. So friendship's a really potent thing that men really desire and need. The 4th thing is abuse, be it any aspect of abuse, sexual, emotional, physical. Can you imagine? Think of what we do to females who have to testify about being abused. They rip those young ladies apart. Yeah. Could you imagine what they would do to a young man that went in there and said, I was abused? One, being by a woman would be horrendous. You weakling, how could you let that happen? Da, 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 da. If it was by a man, why did you let him do it? What's wrong with you? Da, da, da. I mean, so, and there's been more and more cases that I worked with in my practice. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. The number of young men abused or taken advantage of by males and females in their lives. So it's and physical, emotional abuse is even worse because that's long standing. That's something that goes deep, deep, deep. They're all very abusive and they really bruise you up all around, but the impact is lifelong. It's not something you can just get over. First of all, you have to really cleanse yourself with acknowledging it, owning it, and realizing it's only a portion of who you are. It doesn't define who you are, but you have to acknowledge it in your nakedness. You got to be naked, vulnerable, and say, this happened to me, but I'm somebody in spite of this. I'm more than this. And the only way you could do that, I believe, in men's work is to do it in the company of other men that are trusting and open and supportive. You can't do it alone.
Totally agree, Richard, so much. That's just outstanding. And I just want to touch on a little bit on the friendships piece. And I think that everything you're saying is just resonating loud and clear with me because I have some close friends too. And it's interesting when we get on our conversations together, if it's just myself and one of them, you know, we'll have a conversation and I'll say, well, did you tell so-and-so that, our other buddy? No, I haven't told them that. Then I'll have a different conversation with the other buddy. And did you tell our other friend that? No, I haven't told him that. And you're kind of like, you know, I'm doing men's work and I'm sitting here in the middle going, well, is it my role now to share each other's stories? To get them to come into a room with other men, to be able to be comfortable enough and know, because the only way that we learn how to be men and to have true healthy masculinity is to be in the company of other men.
Absolutely.
doing this work. We don't do it with our wives and, sharing all this stuff with our wives. That's great, but we're not developing ourselves as men when we do that. We develop when we get in the company of other men, and to be able to say that and have an understanding back to, affection and passion. It's really about learning for us to learn how to be intimate with that's non-sexual.
I agree.
That has strength and power, right?
Absolutely. Well, the thing that gets me too is I don't believe, nor do I want my wife to be my best friend. We had a big argument about this throughout our whole marriage, because when you go and buy a Valentine's card, it'll say my lover, my friend, my this. My wife, I'm not her best friend. Her best friend's her sister. I know that's her best friend. Now, a best friend to me, when we got married, in most marital ceremonies, there's usually 2 candles that light one. My wife, as I see it, is part of me. We are one because we became this. My best friend has to be a male in my mind, because I want to talk about, when did your scrotum start to sag? When did you have this in your life? When did you do this? My wife doesn't come to me and says, honey, my breasts are sagging. What do you think I should do? How the hell would I know? She's going to talk to her sister.
Exactly.
I don't get it. Here's another example. When my wife would be looking at the Sunday paper,
yeah,
and she'll be looking at the department store stuff, and she'll be looking at different things, and she'll, while looking at the paper, call her sister, Chris, your bras are on sale at the Macy's or whatever department. They're on sale, and they'll talk about their bras and the sale, and I'm thinking, oh, my wife knows her sister's breasts. Bra type or size,
yeah,
whatever. So I'm thinking to myself, okay. So I was reading the paper one Sunday, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try it. Jockeys were on sale. So I called up my brother-in-law and said, John, guess what? Jockeys are on sale at Macy's. He thought I was freaking nuts. And I'm thinking to myself, why is that any different? If you and I go to the gym and I see that you were Calvin Klein underwear, and I see myself, why wouldn't it be strange for me to say, hey, Alan, TJ or whatever, some department store has your underwear on sale. Why is that such a weird thing? I just don't understand it. I mean, now that sounds corny to some guys, I realize it. But why would that be so strange? It wouldn't be strange if I said, hey, that piece of tools you want, it's at the hardware store on sale.
Yeah, it's almost like we have no fly zones when we come to certain things, right? And it's all made up stuff, right? It's stuff that wherever it came from is just not real, and we just have to break free from that, and it's funny, but it's so true. I wanted to ask you, in your work also, you said there are 3 things that men tend to hold on to, right? It's that give us the most grief. And I'm wondering if you can tell us what those are, and what in your work, what would you suggest we do to overcome them?
Well, the 3 are fear of exposure of who we are, and that the illusion or the costume that we're wearing, we're fearful that someone will find out that it's a costume, that we're not really underneath our nakedness isn't what is projected by the costume. So the fear of being found out. And I'm not talking about being found out if your sexual orientation or any of that. That's a whole other issue. I'm talking about that you have there are things you don't do well, or that some of it that you're pompous about, you really don't have any validation for, or you coming across, you think you're upper middle class, but you're really poor, or, whatever it might be, but the fear of being found out. The second one is shame. Shame about experiences that we may have in our life. And I'm going to tell you one of the most common one. And again, I may shock some of the people in your audience, but one of the biggest shameful things is homosexual experiences during adolescence. There's a lot of shame about sexual exploration, homosexual expression, mutual jerking off when you're a boy, thinking that nobody else did it, and just having shame about that, or shame about being abused and not wanting to expose it, and the shame that goes with why me, and just feeling inadequate, and just the shame associated with whatever, or something that you did to someone else that maybe you took advantage of a younger boy or did something that you're ashamed that you did, and the fear of that being exposed. And secrets is just what it means. Secrets are things that you either fantasize about or question. When I had, I'll tell you, when I had my first training as a sex therapist, I went to a seminar. It was for men only on male sexuality. And the psychiatrist, when we went to the seminar, you had to walk across a piece of paper and it says, leave your title, your degrees, your title, and enter as a 12-year-old young man. I think it was 12. I can't remember. It's been so many years ago. And we had to sit on the floor, and he sat in a chair. And his question was, what are some questions that a 12-year-old boy would want to know about sexuality that he's thinking about, did, and is frightened that somebody else would find out and not sure others have done it? And one of the ones was, how many young men have ever gone to urinate at a urinal and fought not to look at the guy next to him? And, all these guys said, no, I didn't do that. And he said, you're all bullshit. The truth of the matter is, we either stand straight ahead, looking at the wall, or down at our own penis, but we're really fighting not to look to the guy next. That's one. Second one, a guy said, he wanted to know, he said, has anybody ever, I hope this is okay conversation for your website, your podcast.
Outstanding. This is perfect.
Right. So another one was, how many of you have ever smelled your own semen?
Mm-hmm.
A guy asked that. And the psychiatrist looked at him and laughed and said, what, you always smelled it? And it's like, everybody was like, whoa, but the truth of the matter is, some of us think are wet dreams. It'd be shocking the number of guys that were afraid to even admit they had wet dreams. Even as an adult, I welcome it at 70. I would welcome a wet dream at 70. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
But it was so the secrets of thinking that we have questions or fantasies, or, it's like, the whole idea of keeping private things that we fantasize about or think about or experience that we think aren't okay, harnessing those and keeping those within our chest, it gets heavy.
Yeah.
Just keep thinking, you keep putting them on your chest, but there's something about freeing it to be able to just say all this. And someone said, what, that's it? Could you imagine if you were a younger guy or my younger brother and you said, have you, Richard, have you ever smelled your semen? And I would say, Alan, what? You didn't taste it? That sounds corny. I know that's an exception, but it's not rare. But my point is, it's the whole fear of being exposed, because it all ties into wanting to be accepted and feel confident to stand amongst men and say, I am a man amongst men. I am different, but equal to all of you.
100%.
That's powerful to
totally.
be able to say, it's just, one of my secrets, I'll tell you one of my secrets. I'm a short, little chubby guy now. But when I was 17, I was one of 7 boys who won the United States National Tap Dancing Championship. Now, I don't tell a lot of guys that, because they look at me now and I'm a chubby little guy, but those days I was skinny, fit, and I was a tap dancer. Now, there were 7 of us. It was rare to find 7 boys from one dance studio. But what happened was, Alan, when it became public, I kept it a secret for like 17 years. The competition was in Buffalo, New York.
Yeah.
I lived in Niagara Falls, New York. It was in the Sunday paper. When I went to school in September, we had high school fraternities. My fraternity brothers met me at the front door of school and kicked me out of the fraternity. And they called me Mr. Tutu my whole senior year, because I was gifted with the ability to dance. And I kept it a secret. Mm-hmm. And the shame that came when they confronted me, I never danced again, because I allowed them to steal a gift that I had. I wonder how many young men in America or in Canada or around the world, they have a talent that has been stifled, ridiculed, or laughed at that we stopped doing that was really a gift that we had to give mankind?
Yeah, no kidding, Richard. That is just wow, what a powerful story there. And and it's because we have this warped sense of what men should do or boys should do and what women should do and ladies should do, and it's just totally out there. Like, to have a skill like that, when I was in school and was thinking about a career, I really wanted to be a cook, a chef, and so that's the career I chose. Now, back then there was no food TV, there was no Bobby Flay and all this stuff going on like this. Today it's cool. It's cool to be a chef. But when I was doing it many years ago, that meant that I was in the vocational side of school, which was where the kids went, where maybe you weren't quite as smart academically. So part of your school was some form of a vocation, whether that'd be carpentry or cooking or something like that. And that was the mindset a lot of people had. Oh, well, that's why Alan's in there. He mustn't have been smart enough to go to university. Well, the truth of it is I was just too lazy to put the 4 years in. And I really loved working with my hands and creating something that made people happy. And so it wasn't sexy like it is today. And it's unfortunate that men make decisions about their lives and what they want to do based on peer pressure or outside forces. And if they don't have the support, then it's hard for them to stick to it. So I really appreciate you, Richard, sharing that, because I know there are listeners on this podcast that are young men in their 20s that listen to this, that may be harboring and have that secret passion, something they're really good at, and they're afraid to go out and express it. And they need to go do that, because whether you're a professional tap dancer or belly dancer or accountant or psychologist or cook or chef, it doesn't matter. Are you expressing who you are as a man to the best of your ability? And you only do that if you're living your truth. So that's truth right in there, brother. So listen, so why do guys have such a hard time starting a conversation or talking about about stuff? Now, we've been talking about a lot of stuff here, but why is it that we have a hard time? Is it because of fear and shame, or is there other things behind this?
Well, I think it's all that, but I also think it's a risk.
Mm-hmm.
It's a risk, particularly if you have a friend they've had for years and you've never said anything to then risk saying it to them may frighten the hell out of them and they're gone. Now, what I suggest is that it's a good question, actually. I think what we need to do is we need to be more comfortable in developing friendships to really ask questions early on. For example, if I'm meeting you at a social, you're at the National Speakers Association convention with me, and I've never met you before. And we're sitting next to each other. Oh, hi, my name's Richard. Hi, my name's Alan. What do you speak on, Alan? You tell me what you speak on. I tell you what I'm speaking on. And then I may say to you, it's really difficult. I've been in the business for a long time. It's really hard, particularly to make it in this business, because you got to be really pretty upfront and honest about who you are, because you get examined a lot by your content. Have you prepared yourself, Alan, for being dissected up in this thing? Well, what do you mean, Richard? Well, people are going to probe you about, you talk about relationships. Have you been happy in your relationship? Do you know? So and if guys can't handle it, then you realize this isn't the right guy for me. I think sometimes you can't go and just vomit up and ask questions, because that's a little too much, but you got to be more comfortable. And one thing is, what do you, I'm very bold, because to me, I look at life is too short. And I may ask you right up front, Alan, in this day and world, people divide each other by liberal and conservative. Where do you fall on that? And sometimes I'll say, well, I'm fiscal conservative, but socially liberal. And I tell people right up, well, then you could tell well. And then they said, well, what do you mean by liberals? And I said, well, I lived in a community in the college in the 60s. I was a hippie. I'm very upfront. So that if someone's that upfront, but if someone is very private and offensive, then you got to be cautious. If they say I'm a very strict conservative, then you got to decide. That's a very big cue. I'm a little more left on certain things. This isn't going to be a good match. Or you say to them, well, do you have any friends that are pretty liberal compared to you? And they say, oh, yeah, one of my best friends is. Oh, really? Okay, then he's open to it. So I think we got to be bolder in asking questions and not just asking, what do you do for a living? Which is our first question. What do you do for a living?
Yeah.
So again, it takes trial and error. And my point, if I offend you, then it wasn't a good match. It wasn't my intent, but I'm not opposed to asking questions. And if you're offended by it, now you can say to me, Richard, that's a little too personal. Oh, I appreciate that, Alan. Well, now I know he's a little guarded. Maybe I got to give him a little time, but maybe I'm a little too forceful with him. It takes comfort. The more comfortable you are in it, and here's how I look at this, is I know where I'm weak because I've done a lot of work on myself, and I know where I'm strong. No one could hurt you when you know where your flaws are. If you could verbalize your flaws, then like some guy said to me one day, you're a short little fat guy. And I said, you're pretty observant. I am. I'm trying to lose weight, but thank you for being so observant. I am a short little fat guy. I could get pissed off about it, but the truth of the matter is he wasn't. He was very fit. Well, if you need that to feel good, sir.
Yeah, exactly.
For you. But I know I'm a short little fat guy, but I'm also very good at what I do. So it depends on how the more you cleanse and are comfortable in your nakedness, no one can hurt you. No one can hurt you.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Richard. Absolutely, for sure. And I think it's important. I like how you talked about, being able to take some risks and to look at something outside of that. What do you do for a living? And I think, that's such a great little piece there. I hope guys were able to pick that up and to really get a handle on that, because it's important that we learn to have conversation starters and have those and be able to step out of ourselves, out of our comfort zone and be able to have conversations. Now, part of this must have rolled into, now you've started this men mentoring men network. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the network and the program and the purpose and everything around the program.
Okay. Well, I created it because, like I said, I was on the national speaking circuit doing a lot of corporate training for companies all over the United States. And at 70, I don't want to travel as much anymore. And I really have given up that portion of my business and going back to what I really started speaking on in the very beginning, which is mental health, men's issues, and what have you. So I came up with Men Mentoring Men Network, and there's 3 components. There's the seminar called Mask, M-A-S-K, Unity, Revealing the Man Behind,
nice,
which is based on what we just talked about, but much more in depth on each of those components. And the guys that come to the seminar will do personal work related to those things in a group format. And that's a very intensive half-day seminar. The upsell, if you will, is Voyager Weekend, which is a weekend, again, based on the first component, masculinity, 4 components, but this one goes even deeper into really getting down to your naked truth, where it's really more not just acknowledging what the issues are, but within the group, helping you come to peace with it, to break away, in a sense, own your testicles. Sometimes we give them away, and through this work, it's for you to get them back and say, I am okay as a man. It's a weekend, very intensive, 8 to 12 guys max. And
nice.
There's numerous of those going to happen. And then the third thing is a community, which will be a membership online community. And we'll have breakout groups where men could just talk about bisexuality, marriage issues, finance, retirement, health, nutrition, spirituality, where I'm going to have other men that are knowledgeable to facilitate those discussions in a membership community. And I'm going to be launching this. The website's not up yet, so I'm in the process of launching it really soon. I'm working on the dynamics to do this, and it's my mission for this year and the rest of my career. So
that's outstanding.
If someone's interested, they could, at any of these things, they could email me at richard@richardavdoian.com. Avdoian spelled A, V like in Victor, D like in David, OIAN.com. And if you are going to email me, please put in the memo, I heard you on Alan's podcast, so I don't delete you if I don't know your name.
Outstanding. Well, Richard, I want to thank you for spending time with me today. We unpacked so much about, and shed a lot of light on men's issues, some of the biggest stuff that we're dealing with, and you've really given some really good ideas and keys and tactics for us to help, really expand and get to own ourselves and to take the mask off of the masculinity that we've been burying ourselves in from past conditioning. So I really want to thank you for being on the show, and I really appreciate you being here today.
Well, it's an honor. I really appreciate the opportunity and the invite. So you have a blessed day, my friend, and continue to do well in your work. I'll be supportive in any way I can.
Right on. Thank you, brother.
Thank you for listening to the Evolving Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.